We are your home theater and AV questions answered. This is AVRant. Want your home theater or AV question answered by Tom and Rob? Send it to question@avrant.com. Welcome to another edition of AVRant. I'm Tom Andry, and I'm here with
Rob H. This is AVRant. It's your home theater and AV questions answered. Welcome back to Standard Time. And there were indeed many car accidents in my area on the Monday after the time change. And this one never makes sense to me. The one where
Why?
where we lose an hour totally makes sense to me that there's car accidents on the Monday after.
What?
The one where we gain an hour, why are people still having accidents?
Are they rushing?
I think so. I think everyone goes, oh, I've got an extra hour. And then all of a sudden they're late. And that's what causes it. I have no idea. But anyway, welcome back to Standard Time.
I've never heard. I think every time you say this, and every time I'm incredulous about the entire thing, because it doesn't make sense that people get in accidents just because of daylight savings time. But
the losing an hour one, that one makes sense to me.
Well, I don't think so. I mean,
yeah,
just people.
You lost an hour of sleep, and that one I can definitely see people rushing. But in the fall, or it's practically winter since we stretch it out so long. Anyway, that's really not important. That was my little thing to say hello and welcome back. There we are. Welcome back.
Yeah, we're getting down to like the high 50s, which is, I don't know, 20 something probably, or 19, 18 something for you. I don't know. I can't do the conversion. But everybody's freaking out. They're like, oh my God, it's freezing.
Great.
I'm like, you are wearing a long sweater, a scarf, shorts, and flip-flops.
Mm-hmm.
Is it the weather that's the problem? Or is it the fact that you only have half an outfit? This is Florida, folks. This is what I deal with on a daily basis.
Yep.
Just crazy. All right. The AV Rant podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. To get your question answered, all you have to do is ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. Contact. You can go to avrant.com, leave us a comment there. For now, I am once again getting to the point of so sick of deleting spam mails from hackers that are trying to brute force their way past our password stuff.
I didn't realize that was happening because, we haven't had legitimate comments there in many months. So
I know. I'm probably going to just shut it back down again because what ends up happening is I just get, basically you get 10 tries to try to figure out your password. So they just try to create, they try whatever accounts they can figure out to do that. And then people are like, how come I'm getting these emails that my password is trying to be reset? I'm like,
jeez,
you got hacked and now they're trying to hack me too. So hopefully your password, luckily you have apparently somebody's doing yard work or something out there. You have no permissions on my website, so it doesn't do them any good. But,
right.
I don't know. It's irritating. It's literally hundreds of emails a day. That's why people are like, how come you don't respond to my messages at your Tom at AVRant?
Yeah.
I'm like, I cannot find them. I cannot find them.
Oh, absolutely shut down the comments on the WordPress site.
I'll have hundreds.
It's
a day.
Really not going to affect anybody who's a legitimate listener of ours. So
no, I know. That's the thing.
Okay, I didn't realize that was going on.
Well, every once in a while, somebody gets mad. And they're like, how come I can't comment on your web?
Right.
Comment on your... I'm like, first of all, you almost certainly don't want to say anything nice, number one. So go to YouTube, please, where you belong.
Which, by the way, youtube.com/AVRant. That's our YouTube site, and you can watch our videos there, and we have links in the show notes to take you directly to people's questions and news stories and stuff like that. So it's handy.
Yeah. It is what it is. Facebook.com/AVRant podcast as well. Contact Rob directly, rob@avrant.com. His Twitter's at First Reflect. I'm Tom at avrant.com. Not that I'll ever see your message. I got to turn that off again.
Yeah.
I just got it's
I had
bad.
no idea. Absolutely turn that off, for sure.
Yeah. And my Twitter's at avrant_Tom. All right. We got our Thanksgiving episode coming up on Thanksgiving, I guess.
Yeah,
I don't know.
We're recording it next week, so yeah.
Are we?
This episode is our last chance to let people know to get in a question. We've so far, at the moment we're recording this, only had one that was marked Thanksgiving. So we've got one at least. If we get none others, then that'll be the one that we answer. But yeah, if you're hearing this right now and you're like, hey, Thanksgiving episode, this is going to be us. So Tom and Rob plus Lee, who's our occasional guest co-host, plus DJ from the Brightside Home Theater Podcast, as well as Ara and Braden, the HT guys from the HD TV and Home Theater Podcast, all 6 of us getting together. So if you've got a question that you would love to have all 6 of us home theater podcast hosts weigh in on, then now's the time. Send that in. This is your last chance if you're hearing it now.
All right.
Yeah, it'll be fun.
Also, isn't this when you're hearing this is the day that Shang-Chi? What is it called?
Shang-Chi and the Legend of the Ten Rings.
I am so terrified of saying that name wrong. I don't know what it is. I'm so bad with names anyways, and every time I look at it, I'm like, I don't know. It could be anything. It could be any. It could make any sounds.
I mean, I'm not pronouncing it with the correct inflection. That's for sure. So.
Oh, I'm sure. Yeah. There's a whole "she" or something like that goes on. Anyways, so yeah, so if you're listening to this podcast the day it's released, just know that I am watching.
Yes.
Marvel movie.
Well, there's a news story
in
about
IMAX.
That's right. We won't. I wasn't.
We'll talk about that in a second.
It'll be an IMAX.
Oh.
That's right.
Yeah, this is coming out on Friday. We're not spoiling anything.
That's true.
If you haven't heard about that from now.
Mm-hmm.
All right, I want to thank our listeners of the week. To become a listener of the week, you need to support the podcast in some way. One of the ways we prefer you to do it is to go to avrant.com, click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link, send us a PayPal donation, which we got this week from Nelson. So thank you very much, Nelson.
Yeah, Nelson, thank you for the PayPal donation. Really appreciate the financial support.
And we equally appreciate those 133 patrons over at patreon.com. Patreon's a service where every month they take a little money from you and give most of it to us. Mm-hmm. So however much you determine, I think the minimum is $1.
Yep.
So $12 a year to help keep this podcast going, paying the bills. It doesn't actually pay the bills. It is what it is. It's a labor of love.
It's better than nothing.
So we got 133 patrons right now, including James, who's part of the 2 Hour Plus Club, and Bertrand. So thank you to our 133 patrons, including James and Bertrand.
Yes, indeed. That is patreon.com/AVRant podcast. If you would like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation, a minimum of $1, and whoever our 133rd patron was, that's what they did. It went up by $1, and I'm really happy with that. Anybody who's, I know some people are like, oh, I feel like I should give more, but then the end result is giving $0. So I'd rather have the $1, quite frankly, if that's affordable. And that's wonderful. So thank you to our 133 patrons, James and Bertrand. Thank you for being 2 of them.
That's right. We also, if you can't support us that way, figure out some other way to do it. Mm-hmm. And either we'll notice it and mention on the podcast, or say, hey, I did this thing. Mention me.
Yeah.
And we'll mention you. So we've got Eric, who sent a gift card, an Amazon gift card to you.
Yeah, I got one from Eric.
Did I not get one from Eric?
I don't know. I know that I got one from Eric.
I don't see what. I don't know. Again, if it goes to my AVRant thing, it just gets lost.
I think Eric's was just to me because he mentioned it on Twitter, like directly to me. So I think that one was me.
It does not hurt my feelings, people, if you decide that, hey, Rob's the one who really helped me and Tom's kind of a dork, so I'm going to give the money to Rob. Doesn't hurt my feelings. So thank you, Eric, for slighting me and giving something
Nice.
Thank you, Eric, for supporting Rob and his Canadian ways. That's right. There's a little communist nation up there.
There probably is an Amazon gift card sitting in your inbox that just never gets redeemed. I'm sure. You know what? There's got to be some that have expired from like
I would not
years past. That would not surprise me.
We also, both of us got, and the only reason I know this is because I went looking for it because Rob told me to. We got an Amazon gift card from Vince.
Actually, I'm not sure if I got one from Vince. I think that might have only gone to you. Who knows?
Well, there you go. See? Turnabout's fair play,
Absolutely.
Rob.
That's how it goes.
Anyway, so thank you, Vince, and thank you, Eric.
Yes, Eric and Vince. Thank you for the Amazon gift cards to whomever they were sent.
Nelson also sent some Movies Anywhere codes. He says we've helped him make some good home theater decisions, including a pair of SVS PB16 Ultras. So I'll be using those because
you
Rob can't. More for me.
Yep.
And we got some notes of gratitude from keeping the podcast going during this hopefully waning days of the pandemic.
Yes, hopefully.
You don't know how many. There's a whole bunch of parents I know who are like, over the moon thrilled that they can get their kids vaccinated. Right
Yeah,
now. I'm like,
for sure.
I'm like, you know what? I love giving my kids shots too, because it's music to my ears when they cry.
We're still waiting on the approval for that in Canada. Hopefully coming very soon. We typically follow the FDA down in the United States by a couple of weeks or a month or so. So very much looking forward to that. The 5 to 11-year-olds being able to get vaccinated. Because, yeah, something like 40% of our cases are in kids that age now because they're the ones who aren't vaccinated. So it's not good. Not good at all.
So we got some notes of gratitude from a Rob, not you, different Rob. Gav in Canberra, Australia, which, according to TikTok, apparently is a tyranny now. I don't know what's going on down there.
I have not seen anything about that. I'm not on TikTok.
Oh my,
so
yeah. I guess
not
there's
know.
the far right. The far right has decided that they're being locked in their houses or something. And like all my Australian friends are like contacting me, going, "What are your people talking about over there?" I'm like, dude, shut. I seriously do not know what's happening. They're like, is something happening in our country that we don't know about? I'm like, no, you guys are fine. You would know. You would know if there were police in the streets,
right,
or whatever it is that people are saying. I don't know. Anyways, Gav, hope you're safe.
I had no clue.
Sorry. Andy, who's also a part of the 2 Hour Plus Come, we keep him company while he does the dishes and rides his bike. Yeah, there you go. I should actually listen to her. I don't listen to anything when I ride because I'm too terrified of getting run over by Florida drivers. John, Luke, hopefully that Samsung Q80T order works out, and Bertrand. So we got Rob, Gav, Andy, John, Luke, and Bertrand. So there you go, guys.
Yes, I'll just repeat the names. Rob, Gav, Andy, John, Luke, and Bertrand. Thank you all very much for the notes of gratitude, for the notes of encouragement. They are very much appreciated, and a big thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions.
I'm actually pretty happy that Australia has SVS because they're really hard to ship to. You know
right?
I mean? From somebody who lived there for a while, it is really hard to get stuff in Australia, and everything is super duper marked up because of the shipping costs. But I'm kind of excited that we can recommend SVS in Australia, and I know it's been for a little while, but I've just never said that out loud. All right, in the news, and this is one I kind of mentioned earlier, Disney announced that starting November 12th, 13 Marvel movies will be available on Disney Plus in an IMAX enhanced format with the aspect ratio switching between 2.35 to 1 and 1.9 to 1. You'll have the option to watch either in the IMAX version or the widescreen version with no aspect ratio switching from the menu. For now, the IMAX enhanced version will still use Dolby Atmos, but they said that a streaming version of immersive DTS audio is in the works. I have an Xbox, so I get whatever audio Microsoft deems me worthy of having. That is the only audio I get. You can send whatever you want. Microsoft will tell me what I deserve. So,
yeah, the report so far, and they said they confirmed this with representatives from like all the companies involved, is that at least at the beginning, it'll still have Dolby Atmos audio because, I mean, they've already got these movies on the Disney Plus service and they're in Dolby Vision with Dolby Atmos. They're just in a constant 2.35 to 1 aspect ratio at this time. So the idea is starting this Friday, they'll be able to do the frame rate switch, or the aspect ratio switching. So they're going with the digital IMAX aspect ratio, the 1.9 to 1. I don't actually believe any of these movies used the full height that IMAX can do, which is 1.43 to 1. I don't recall any of these movies ever actually having used that. So I don't think we're losing anything in terms of, additional picture height that could have been there. 1.9 to 1 is still a tiny bit wider than 16 by 9. 16 by 9 is 1.77 to 1. Right. So there's still going to be little black bars even during those sequences. But let's see.
So here's my question what is the aspect ratio that I would have seen if I had gone to the movie theater? Would it have switched between 2.35 to 1 and the IMAX, or would it have been IMAX the entire time?
Right. So if you had gone to an IMAX theater, all of these 13 movies except for Infinity War and Endgame would have had only some sequences in 1.9 to 1, and the rest of the movie would have been in 2.35 to 1. So there'd be switching aspect ratios. Infinity War and Endgame were filmed end to end in the 1.9 aspect ratio. So those ones just stay in the taller 1.9 aspect ratio throughout the entire movie.
The correct thing to do is to allow it to switch if it wants to.
That is the original way you would have seen it in an IMAX theater. So, and at least that's
then if you have a movie that doesn't switch, it's just always going to be an IMAX anyways. So if you put it into IMAX all the time, then you are potentially cutting off some of the sides.
Right. And for movies like Ant-Man, the first one, because Ant-Man and the Wasp is one of these 13 movies that switches, but the original Ant-Man, that was in 1.85 to 1 throughout the entire movie. That wasn't IMAX. It was just in 1.85 to 1. And so was Avengers, the first Avengers movie. That was in 1.85 to 1. So those ones don't do any aspect ratio switching. They're not part of these 13 IMAX titles because they weren't IMAX, but they're still in the taller 1.85 to 1 aspect ratio. So the point is, I'm happy about this because I only ever want movies to be at home in the same aspect ratios as they were in the theater. That's what I want. I don't want things cropped off. If certain sequences were done in a different aspect ratio, then that's what I want to see. If it's like a Wes Anderson movie and he's changing the aspect ratio to all kinds of crazy stuff, then I want that too. I don't want them to like pan and scan it or zoom in and crop just to retain one consistent aspect ratio when the person making the movie wanted the aspect ratio to change. So I'm very happy about this. I don't really care if the DTS streaming audio ever makes it here because they promise stuff and then it sometimes, takes 2 years before it actually arrives. So I'm not really worried about that as long as the Dolby Atmos soundtrack is still part of it. In fact, I'd probably prefer it. It's probably more compatible with more things. And then, there's the mention of, do you need an IMAX enhanced television and AV receiver to actually take advantage of this? No, they should. I don't even know if the flag is going to be in there. It's probably going to depend on the device that you're using to watch Disney Plus. There's lots of questions about that. But if the flag were in there, then it would trigger an IMAX enhanced certified television and AV receiver to go into IMAX enhanced mode. But there's absolutely no reason why you can't watch and listen to this on a non-IMAX enhanced certified television and AV receiver.
It's just an aspect ratio. I mean, it's not like
this part is. What Disney Plus is doing really is just the aspect ratio changing. So and that I'm very happy about. I'm all on board.
The TV doesn't care.
No.
The TV just puts the black bars where it's supposed to have the black bars. It's not that hard.
Yep.
From Karl, Optoma launched their new UHZ50. What? UHZ? What?
Yes.
HZ?
Yeah.
Why?
Because Optoma, when they're using a laser light engine, always puts a Z in their model number.
That's
just
fine,
what they've chosen to do.
UHZ just doesn't.
Because there is a
ultra high laser.
There is a UHD50, so you got to be careful. This is the UHZ50.
If you can't hear me rolling my eyes over the podcast, believe me, I am rolling my eyes over the podcast. UHZ50 4K laser projector with features aimed at gamers and people without screens. It's in a compact form factor using a 1080p DLP chip that can be flashed 4 times per frame to create 4K resolution. It's using Optoma's DuraCore laser light engine. I just want to tell you, DuraCore, that literally could be anything. That could be a bike part. For sure, someone would buy a DuraCore bike part. You could say it was a processor for a computer, a DuraCore processor. People would buy that.
This is their trademark
worst name. DuraCore laser light engine that shines a single blue laser through a spinning yellow phosphor wheel. All lens controls are manual, including its 1.3 times zoom range. Throws a 100-inch image from 8 feet 9 inches to 11 feet 7 inches. It's $2,800. That's not so bad.
Yeah.
So the novel features that are the inclusion of 6 presets for different colored walls, plus geometric correction for geometric correction. Was keystone correction? Is that what they're trying to say?
No, it's a little bit more than that.
Okay. Plus geometric correction for projecting onto surfaces that aren't perfectly flat. Clearly, they don't want people to feel like they have to buy a screen because that's when you're paying $2,800 for
I know, right?
a projector.
It's a little bit.
The extra $110 that you're going to spend for a silver ticket screen is the breaking point. The UHZ50 also gets Optima's 240 hertz gaming feature. That's in quotes, so I imagine it doesn't actually do it or something. I don't know.
Well,
it can actually accept 120 hertz and even 240 hertz signals, but only at 1080p resolution. 4K signals are limited to 60 hertz. There's an enhanced gaming mode that brings latency down to under 10 milliseconds, but all image processing is turned off, including that geometric correction feature. There's no world where that you can project this onto a non-flat
colored wall
and have this look right. I don't care what their geometric thing is. I mean, okay.
I mean, it's a grid. It's a grid where you can move the little grid points around. That's what it is.
Right. If it were, if you had like a seam and like a slightly different angle, okay, I could see maybe them correcting for that. But this is going to make people think I can throw it up on a wall that has, cracks in it and, bumps and unevenness, and it'll just correct itself. No, it's not. It's not.
Well, it doesn't correct itself. You got to move the grid around. So that's some work to make that thing look like a rectangle again. Yeah. And then, the selection of 6 different wall colors. There's no like tan or beige among them, which is a pretty common wall color. I guess you'd go for the light yellow. I guess that's the closest you could do. But it does have to be a light color. This doesn't have built-in quote unquote correction for dark colored walls. So there you go. But yeah, they're clearly trying to be like, spend all your money here and don't worry about it if you can't afford a screen.
Yeah. Let's go through some of the TV firmware updates that have come out recently. Sony released their perfect for PlayStation 5 firmware update for Bravia XR TVs plus the X900H from 2020. Vincentio from LG TV Test put the auto HDR tone mapping feature through its paces and recommends not using it since it sets the peak brightness too high and ends up clipping detail. This update also serves as the final update that was promised in order to add VRR functionality to the X900H. But it didn't fix anything, so
Yeah.
Local dimming is still forced off, so contrast and black levels suffer greatly, and the image is still blurry since the X900H has always had a problem with 120 hertz content. So, yeah. Out of all this 2021 Sony TVs, for some reason, only the X85J got VRR.
Yeah, so the X90J and the X95J, the higher end ones, they're still waiting for yet another firmware update to give them variable refresh rate. And as is the X80J, which is supposed to be among the perfect for PlayStation 5 models, but it didn't get it. The one model, the X85, did, and then the X900H from 2020. So I don't know what's going on over there, but that's what we got. That's Sony.
Meanwhile, the final list of LG TVs that are getting support for Dolby Vision gaming at 120 Hz includes 2020 and 2021 Nano, QNED, and OLED models, but no 2019 models. So sorry, C9 owners. Sucks to be you.
That includes me.
Sorry, sucks to be you.
Yeah.
2020 and 2021 LG TVs are also the first to support automatic filmmaker mode, and Amazon Prime Video is the first and currently only service to support it. Until now, you had to manually put your TV into filmmaker mode if you wanted to use it.
Yeah.
Which does what again?
It's just a picture mode. It's basically the cinema or theater or movie picture mode, but in particular has any motion smoothing turned off. That is the number one thing filmmaker mode is about: is not having frame interpolation, not having the soap opera effect.
So basically, if you've learned anything from this podcast out all over the years, you already have filmmaker mode.
That's right.
Okay, so this will apply to you. And lastly, for this topic, Samsung continues to try and fight Dolby Vision with HDR10 Plus. They announced that HDR10 Plus gaming will be coming in 2022 to their new lineup of TVs. No announcement yet on adding it to existing models. It aims to do all the same things as Dolby Vision gaming, namely source-led tone mapping. Source-led? Why? Anyways, automatic HDR calibration and VRR up to 120 hertz. No announcement on any content or compatible gaming consoles, though. So
they're just like, because what's happened is now that the Xbox Series X has Dolby Vision gaming, And clearly a lot of people bought Samsung televisions for gaming. So they are clearly fielding requests and, let's say, less than cordial communications from people who bought their TVs saying, look, I want Dolby Vision now because my Xbox can output Dolby Vision for games. And so this is their response to say, you don't need that. We're going to have HDR10 Plus gaming. Because I don't know why they hate Dolby Vision so much. I mean, they've got other Dolby technologies in their televisions because they have to. Like, imagine if your TV didn't support Dolby Digital Audio.
Somebody angered somebody at lunch. Somebody didn't.
There's bad
somebody
blood
did something
somewhere. So, yeah, this is what they're saying. Don't worry, just wait until next year. We'll have HDR10 Plus gaming. I think it's dumb. I think they should just get on board with Dolby Vision. But, oh, well, here we are.
One of us. One of us. Some comments from listeners. James, LG announced starting November 15th, LG owners going all the way back to 2016 models can get a 3-month trial of Apple TV Plus for free. You just have to sign up through the built-in app on the TV itself. The small print does say that it's only for new subscribers, though. Well, I would qualify if I had a Samsung anything.
That would be LG. LG is
LG, I'm sorry. I got Samsung on the brain. Alan also experienced weird problems using the Audyssey editor app, specifically with the Denon X3600H. In his case, running Audyssey from the receiver itself worked perfectly fine, which has consistently been reported by other 3600H owners. And using the app and then selecting the flat target also worked fine. Also consistently seems to be the case. But if you ran the app and then tried to use reference, you got no sound at all except out of his surround speakers.
Yeah.
He thought it was just a crazy glitch, and he was actually going to ask about it. Then we talked about the 3600H specifically having these weird Audyssey editor app problems, so he's glad he's not alone or nuts. I just, whatever. I just
still have no idea why and why
it's not
one model.
I mean, somebody crossed the line of code someplace.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's all that is.
Yeah.
Somebody did something wrong. I do feel like this is an Audyssey app issue, and you know what I mean Audyssey should be contacting Denon. Denon's gonna be like, we don't know. I would be shocked if Denon had the hardware side of it had anything to do with it. I would be almost
given that it's only this one model though, something is going wrong.
You don't think each one of these apps, the app doesn't do things slightly differently,
I have no idea.
Whatever.
I have no idea on the coding side what is responsible for that.
James in the UK kindly corrected our pronunciation of Dolby Cinema in Leicester Square.
Yes.
Leicester, whatever.
That's what it looks like. Looks like Leicester. That's what I guessed at. But it's Leicester. Kind of like how Worcester sauce instead of Worcestershire sauce.
Worcestershire is how we say it here.
Oh, really? It's just Worcester.
Well.
There's a whole
Not in America, it's not.
There's a whole bunch of letters.
Not when you speak in American.
See all those letters? They're just for the page.
The Queen's American over here.
You don't say them, but you got to make sure you know about them and write them down. Otherwise, you'll look dumb.
American, I look dumb all the damn time. Doesn't matter. Leicester Square. JT on Twitter also said it's Leicester. 2 S's. Whatever. James says he hasn't actually visited the theater in person, but he's been to the Dolby Cinema in Leeds, which is pronounced shirt.
Yeah, right.
Because why not?
I hope we got that one right.
Leeds, pronounced Susan. And that one has a screen that is 62 feet or 19 meters wide. He did want to mention, though, that the Odeon at Leicester Square...
Odeon is a word we know.
what did I say? Odin?
You said Odin.
Whatever.
It's Odeon.
Odeon. Whatever. It's probably not pronounced that way. It's pronounced Zeus.
That's right, yeah.
At Leicester Square, originally built in 1937, received a big renovation in 2019. Now features Dolby Vision, Dolby Atmos, and 800 recliners in place of the original 1,600 seats with a balcony. He's been to the Odeon, and he found the screen surprisingly small. They retained the Art Deco style, so it is not considered a Dolby Cinema, despite the technology it now uses. So, yeah, it does look like you were sitting pretty far away.
Yeah, it's a big theater. Like it's a big seating area.
Yeah,
so, even though the screen might be big, it doesn't look big from where you are.
There's also the Empire at Leicester Square from 1962 that features an IMAX screen now, but he considers what they did to the original auditorium to be an abomination. Them some fighting words, son. The classic design was carved in two, with one side becoming an IMAX theater and the other a regular, charmless, unremarkable movie theater. That happened in 2013. He greatly misses the empire it used to be. So there you go. If you wanted to get James's take on all the theaters in Leicester Square.
Yes.
Then, yeah. All right. Let's get to some questions here. Nick. So is high frame rate going to be a thing for movies and TV shows or not? So not long ago, Nick was thinking about how it seems like a missed opportunity in Hollywood, and he was hopeful that it might lead to a lot less shaky cam and rapid, confusing cuts. But then he's got to thinking that maybe the reason there's so much jerky camera motion and chopping editing is because stuff needs to be covered up. If every image was crystal clear, it'd be easy to see that it isn't really the actors doing the fight scenes, or that punch didn't really land, or that it was a dummy or a miniature. In other words, do we actually need the inherent blur of 24 frames per second in order to preserve the movie magic? So The Hobbit, right? Mm-hmm. The Hobbit came out in the higher frame rate, and some people loved it.
And that was only 48. So they only doubled the 24 to 48. That wasn't a gigantic leap, but it was higher frame rate.
So there's a lot I don't know about filming movies. Mm-hmm. Okay. I know a lot about how to watch them.
Sure.
So I don't know a ton about filming them. I do know that the shaky cam isn't always all about the covering things up or making things, seem more real. Mm-hmm. I mean, you can see in a video where a punch clearly doesn't land with the sound on. You put the sound back on, and suddenly your brain says, nope, that hit.
Sure.
Because the sound makes the difference. So it's not really about that. The shaky cam in fight scenes and the quick cuts and all this stuff is supposed to convey that frenetic pace of a fight, the energy, the action, all of that other stuff.
Sometimes they are covering stuff up, though, like in
sure.
So like in the famous Liam Neeson action scenes where it's him, jumping over a fence and there's 32 cuts for that one move. It's like then they're using it to cover something up. So it's not never that.
But this whole unsteady cam has become a style. And if you even look at, and you can always go back to, I want to say Hill Street Blues, but maybe it was a little bit after that. But these procedural cop shows kind of started this whole, the camera sort of moves around like it's really your head, and it gives you, it doesn't just focus on the person and stay still, and that is just sort of a style. So I don't know that it's, clearly, like Rob said, there are some instances where it's being used to cover up the fact that they're using a stunt double or whatever. But the real question here is, do people want the higher frame rates? Now, for, in gaming and all this other stuff, people are very, very concerned about it. So the question would be, to me, because what the people that you're asking me and Rob, the people that you're asking have spent most of their lives with movies being 24 frames per second.
Yeah.
And that is what we're used to. And anything that deviates from that looks odd at first. Mm-hmm. Will we get used to it? I don't know. I haven't spent enough time with it. But there are people growing up right now who are gaming more than they're watching movies or TV, and they're experiencing these higher frame rates. Will they want their movies and TV to also be on those higher frame rates? I don't know. So, I think that's the generation that will answer the question for you about higher frame rates. I don't think that the frame rate is really the defining thing that makes me like or not like a movie. I think it's, once the story gets going, it's like I was talking with a friend of mine, and she was worried about her hair. I'm like, no one cares about your hair. She's like, oh no, but it looks really weird and blah, blah, blah. I'm like, they only care about your hair until you open your mouth. And once you open your mouth and say something, then they'll decide whether or not they like you as a person. It has nothing to do with your hair. That's not going to be the deciding factor. The frame rate for me is not going to be the deciding factor. Is the product a good product? Is the movie a good movie? Is the story a good story? That's going to determine whether or not I like a thing. So I don't know if frame rates are going to go up. I would assume that they would because they keep increasing these numbers whether we use them or not. I mean, we're up to 240, frames per second. I mean, I don't know why we need all that, but I guess we could say that show the same frame, 10 times.
I mean, so far the sample size is very small, right? As far as like big
Right.
budget Hollywood movies that have used high frame rate, yes, we got the Hobbit movies, we've got Ang Lee's 2 movies, we've got
Right.
Gemini Man and Billy Lynn's Long Halftime Walk, the Avatar movies, right, coming up, they perpetually being
Those
delayed.
might
Those are
be the-
supposed to be.
But those might be the first ones I ever see because every movie you've talked about so far, I have no interest in.
But it's as I commented when I watched Gemini Man in particular. It's funny because every time I go into a high frame rate movie and actually watch it in a high frame rate, there's a big part of me that expects to hate it, and so far I never have. I have never hated it. I have definitely noticed it. It definitely took a second or two of watching the first, few minutes to sort of get into it, but I've never hated it. I've always found it kind of interesting watching it in the high frame rate. But when I commented on Gemini Man in particular, I was like, yeah, if you're gonna shoot a whole movie this way, there are things that need to be adjusted. The way people act needs to be adjusted, honestly, because it looks a bit different. Clive Owen is a good actor. He looked a bit weird at 120 or 60 frames per second. But Mary Elizabeth Winstead came across fabulously. I think because she barely moves. I think that works to her advantage in the very, very high frame rate. But for some reason, her performance came across really well in the high frame rate, and Clive Owen's not so much. He seemed a little bit strange, to be honest. But he's honed his acting technique. She's honed hers. And in high frame rate, there are differences to be seen. Hugo Weaving came across wonderfully in the Hobbit movies. He just had this presence that he's already a good actor with a great screen presence, but it was even more so in high frame rate for some reason. So I would have difficulty breaking down exactly why that's the case, but it seemed evident. It just felt a bit different. Certain things, fire looks different in high frame rate. Action scenes do look different in high frame rate. So in order for it to super duper catch on, I think it just needs to be used a whole lot more because this is a learning curve. There's a learning process to this. And once somebody nails it from beginning to end.
I think that's going to be it, right?
Yeah.
Somebody puts out a phenomenal movie that is hugely popular with high frame rate, then suddenly people are going to see, and not people like us, but filmmakers and actors are going to look at this
the bigger part of it.
and see it and go, ooh, I want something that looks like that. Like if these Avatar movies come out and they look astonishingly good, then suddenly we're going to have, because that's the thing that nobody said. Oh, I watched The Long Walk Home or whatever the heck that movie
Billy
was called.
Lynn's Long Halftime Walk.
Yeah, that's what I said. And I was like, well, I can't wait to make a movie that looks like that. No one said that. No one said that about the Hobbit movies. Nobody said that about any of these movies that we're talking about. So what we need is the Matrix 4 to come out and just be
that is coming out, but it's not going to use high frame rate. But
something like the Matrix, or basically.
Yeah, it will it be a thing or not? I think it will. I think it eventually will. But honestly, I've said this since 120 hertz, 120 frames per second recording was available. I want what Ang Lee was convinced to shoot at 120 hertz by one technology expert in particular, and I'm forgetting his name offhand, and I apologize for that. But he was showing how if you shoot everything at 120 hertz, if you want something it's moving really fast, it literally just would have been a blur at 24 frames per second. But you can show it back at this 120 frames per second frame rate and see clarity in this super fast movement that there was literally no other way to do it. A regular 24 frames per second would be gone. 30 frames per second it would be gone. But if you want to get back the 24 frames per second feel, you just show 5 frames overlapped, because you're shooting at 120. And you can do that. You have that freedom. So I'm in favor of that. I'm in favor of shoot everything at the high frame rate. Then you have options. Do I want to just pick and choose certain frames? Do I want to use all of them? Do I want to overlap some of them? I think this could even tie into variable frame rate for movies, not just games. Maybe instead of overlapping frames, you just vary the frame rate, and that gives you more options. I'm in favor of all of that from a technical point of view because, again, I think there will be a learning curve. I think some of it's going to look weird at first, but once people get a handle on it, I think it can be useful, and I don't see any reason to constrict everybody to 24 frames per second for the foreseeable future. Why? That doesn't make sense.
Look at all not all but look at some of the early colored movies. It's like no one knew how to do makeup.
Exactly. Because they were used to black and white makeup, which was very different. And white.
Yeah. So I mean, there's going to be that learning curve. I do I think back to, and we're kind of talking about like things being hidden, stuff like that. I think back to like the first Michael Keaton Batman movie, and the fight scenes in that are so
stiff,
unintelligible.
Wooden.
You can't see what's going on because it's just cut, blur, and then it's over. You're like, I've seen this movie 17 times. I still don't know who's hitting who.
Batman Begins was pretty darn choppy too, to be honest.
Yes, it was. You're right, absolutely. But you look back at these things and you're like, okay, so those things could be more, because that's not realistic. Like when you are watching something happen in real life, it doesn't look like that. It doesn't look that blurry. Also,
if you saw the performers, whether they're the actors or stunt doubles, doing the moves from like a wide shot at regular speed, that wouldn't look good either.
No,
you don't want that in a movie,
right? So there's, it's just going to be another. Well, like Rob said, it potentially could be another tool in the tool belt of the filmmaker.
Yeah.
So. Jorge's cat likes to walk along the TV stand in his living room and leave little nose prints along the bottom of his LCD TV. What's the best way to clean his TV screen without damaging it? Is there a special cloth or spray to use? And does it make a difference if the TV is LCD or OLED? It makes a difference what the material is on the front. So some TVs have glass up front, not a lot, but some of them do, and some of them do not. Some of the LCDs in particular might have some sort of weird plastic stuff up there or whatever this. So almost always you want a microfiber cloth of some sort, and then just a little dab of cleaner, and the cleaner, soap and water is the best way to go, but like not wet.
I suggest lens cleaner, like eyeglasses cleaner.
Sure.
Because eyeglasses cleaner is safe for glass, and it's safe for coatings on those glasses. So since I wear glasses, I have eyeglass cleaner on hand. I use that. Now, I'll usually take if it's like, my OLED that was expensive and I care very much about it, I'll get like a fresh new microfiber cloth, because they're not expensive anymore. You can buy a big package of them for cheap, and I'll spray the lens cleaner onto the cloth, not directly onto the screen. And try to wipe in one direction. Like, don't do big circles, because even with a microfiber cloth, you could potentially put a little swirly mark in there that you can't get rid of. So try and just wipe in one solid direction, straight down the whole time or straight across the whole time. But yeah, microfiber cloth and some eyeglass lens cleaner, neither of which is expensive or difficult to find. And that seems to work really well, regardless of the type of television. I've never had a problem from plasma to OLED to LCD with that technique.
Right. So my father in particular used to use Windex to clean his glasses.
That can etch some glass sometimes.
And that's exactly what happened.
Yeah.
so
don't use that.
So he took his glasses, and then there's like, well, it looks like somebody was cleaning this, with like a ammonia-based product. And my dad was like, does Windex have ammonia in it? Like, yeah, why'd you ask? No reason. So just because something has a glass cleaner doesn't mean that you didn't necessarily want to use it on your TV. Bertrand has been quite happy with his completely blacked out theater. He's enjoying his 77-inch OLED. If there were one more thing about the image left to improve, it's that he noticed judder and stutter sometimes. Doesn't want to turn on soap opera effects. So aside from that, what's the best way to get rid of it? I mean, what's the source? I guess would be my question.
Yeah, for Judder,
is it streaming?
For Judder, for sure, the source is the key thing.
Yeah.
For Judder. So, I mean, actually, I guess we should explain, because Judder and stutter are two different things in video. Judder comes from, we were just talking about frame rates. Judder comes from the vast majority of movies are at 24 frames per second. Our displays are at 60, or in the case of your OLED, 120. But if that 24 frames gets converted to 60 frames first, 24 does not go evenly into 60. You can't just show each frame 3 times because that doesn't equal 60. That equals 72. So to make 24 frames fit into 60 refreshes of your display, they show the first frame twice, the second frame 3 times, the third frame twice, the fourth frame 3 times. You have this 3-2-3-2. And so if there's a
3-2
slow
pull down is what we used to call that back in the day.
Yeah, if there's a slow panning shot, going across something, you'll notice that you don't have smooth movement as the camera pans across the scene. You get this slightly jerky, stilted motion as that happens, and that's caused by this 3-2-3-2-3-2 cadence that's going on. Some 120 hertz televisions, they begin by converting the 24 to 60, and then they just double that. So you still get judder. So you need to have things set so that 24 frames on a 120 hertz display get shown 5 times each. Then you have, 24 times 5 is 120. Then you get the smooth looking motion that you're supposed to have. It shouldn't be an issue with the OLED itself, because certainly the OLED that Bertrand has is very capable of doing that with 24 frames per second content. Particularly in Canada, like one of our bigger services here, if you want to watch all the HBO content, you're going to have Crave. Crave is capable of outputting 24 frames per second, but even on an Apple TV 4K, it does not automatically switch. That's in the app. That's not on the Apple TV 4K hardware's fault. It's not even really the streaming content itself. Like I say, it can be shown at 24 frames per second without a problem. They haven't written their app to properly use the automatic frame rate switching that the Apple TV 4K and other devices offers. So you have to manually put your device, whatever it might be, into 24 frames per second output to get rid of judder on, for example, Crave. Now, that can be the case with other services. I'm pretty sure Peacock is the service in the States that doesn't do the automatic frame rate switching on an Apple TV 4K. So you'd have to manually put the source device itself into 24 frames per second output, go into its video output settings and set it to 24 frames per second instead of 60. So it could be on the source side for judder, that's for sure. In fact, if you're still seeing judder with something, that is on the source side in your case, because your OLED is very capable of not showing judder as long as it's actually getting 24 frames per second. So that's that case there. Now, stutter, that's different, because stutter is inherent to having filmed something at 24 frames per second. If that was the actual exposure rate of the film or the camera that was used, that's in there. It's what they call film judder or film stutter. It is inherent to having recorded at a low frame rate. And because OLED displays refresh so quickly, they impart essentially no blurring to any of the frames that are being shown, that doesn't get covered up at all. On an LCD that imparts some blur to each frame that it shows, it kind of covers up the inherent stutter a little bit because one frame kind of blends into the next. But on an OLED, that doesn't happen. There's an essentially instantaneous switch from frame to frame, and you'll actually see that stutter. So I was pretty sure Bertrand has a C10 OLED. There is a setting in there under the True Motion settings. I can't remember. I think they just called it Cinema in the C10. It's not perfect. It does still impart some soap opera effect. You could experiment with it. You could also experiment with like turning the blur reduction setting up one click. So it's like minimal soap opera effect, but if the stutter bothers you more than that, that's one way to get around it. On the new C1, the 1 generation OLEDs, they actually have in the True Motion setting a new version. They call it Cinematic Movement, and it is the best that has been done yet as far as doing some frame interpolation, but without adding soap opera effect. But that's not the one you have, so maybe in a year or two you'll upgrade to a new one. It'll have even better processing. But that's about all we can do on that front.
Right. 3-2 pull down is something that I actually, when the last review I did of a display was half a dozen, maybe a little bit more than that years ago. Mm-hmm. And it had gotten to the point where 3.2 pull down was just no longer an issue. It just
Right.
wasn't something that that we were having issues with TVs or players or anything. So there's all these different what we call cadence tests that you can do, and it has to do with weird frame rates that can happen, and how your player or your TV deals with each one of those things. And it was just getting to the point where, if you didn't have like some, if you've ever seen like a movie that's been taken like on a like an old camcorder and then transferred to digital, and everything seems fast.
Sure.
It's just that it was filmed at a weird at a weird frame rate, and when you played it back at a normal frame rate, it speeds it up because of how it was filmed. So, but most of the time, if you didn't have something like that was just like a very strange frame rate that was never used, 3.2 pull down shouldn't be that much of an issue, unless, like Rob is describing, there's an actual problem going on, with the settings of the TV.
If the source before it ever gets to your TV is converting 24 to 60, then and it's outputting 60 to your display, it had to do 3.2 pull down. Like I say, there's no other way to do the math to fit 24 into 60. You have to do the 3.2 pull down. So that's where the issue typically arises. If you're still seeing judder on a modern display, it's typically because the source is outputting 60, but what it was playing back was originally 24. So the source is converting 24 to 60, and that's why you can't get rid of the judder on your television. Get the source to output the original 24, and now you can show it without judder.
Just fine.
Yeah.
So he did the math and set things up in his room so that he has exactly a 45-degree field of view. He's thinking he might have liked a slightly larger image now. He's heard about something called a fist test for checking your field of view. Do we know anything about it? Would it be useful in this case? Listen, it's not April, and I am not going to Google fist test for you and then have my wife see the results and then have to have that conversation with her. So, no, I don't know anything about this.
Okay.
I'll let Rob Google it because I'm not Googling fist test.
Okay.
It's not happening.
Since I'm an eyeglasses wearer, I've had eye exams enough I think I know what he's talking about, because
I assume it's just putting your fist in front of your face a certain distance and saying this covers the screen as much as I want to have this, and then you go into your room. And
that's not what it is, at least the one I'm familiar with. The fist test that I'm familiar with when it comes to testing vision, it's a peripheral vision test. And all the person does is they hold their fist out to the side of your head, and they, pull it forward or move it back until you can just barely see their fist anymore. And then they hold up a number of fingers and see if you can tell them how many fingers they're holding out.
You mean like you hold a fist horizontally like this?
Like you hold, so the person's holding their fist. Usually the fingers go up vertically. So they're holding their fist. You're looking straight ahead. They hold the fist to the side of your head, and you tell them, okay, I can't see your fist anymore. They move it a little forward. You go, okay, I can see your fist there. Then they hold up, 1, 2, 3 fingers, and they ask, can you tell me how many fingers you're holding up? Well, you're still looking straight ahead. It's a peripheral vision test. So it does have to do with your field of view, because it's how wide is your peripheral vision, but it's not really something that is applicable to home theater. Like, this is testing.
I wouldn't use that. That's just testing like the greatest amount of field of view you have.
It's the extremity of your field of view. And these days we don't do it anymore. Now you sit in a thing that holds your chin and your forehead in place, and it's all done, with lights and electronics, and you press a button and respond when you can see the thing light up. So they aren't really doing the fist test anymore. But before we had all the fancy electronics to measure this stuff, that was an easy way to, generalize how wide your peripheral and accurate your peripheral vision is. Not really applicable to home theater, because we're not going to that extent. Even people like Karl, who love to sit like within the first 3 rows of a theater and have a massive field of view, are not getting literally to the edges of their peripheral vision. The screen would have to wrap around your head. So that isn't applicable here.
Somebody's buying the curved display.
If you're sitting, you got a 77-inch OLED, you're sitting 6.5 or 7 feet away, and yes, I will agree with you. Moving your seat closer than that starts to feel really weird, like your feet are starting to tickle your center speaker. So, I understand not wanting to sit any closer than that to a 77-inch OLED. So there isn't a ton we can really do here. I mean, the only options are sit even closer than you already are, or go up in screen size. There are 83-inch OLEDs. There's an 83-inch C1 that has that cinematic movement setting. Maybe you're already upgrading your OLED within a year, but I don't think so.
I wouldn't do that. So he updated his iPhone to iOS 15.1, and things were fine at first. But then he also did a firmware update for his Marantz SR8015. Now he's having troubles with AirPlay. It was working perfectly before, but now it gets random disconnects. Kind of like Skype.
Right.
Shutting down on my computer once I updated to the stupid new Windows thing. Worked fine before, Microsoft. What audio do I get from this? You get stereo. Shut up. He's tried to fully unplugging and replugging in the receiver and also completely resets network connection, but no dice. He still gets random disconnects. Any ideas? Yeah, wait. That's what's gonna. You just gotta wait until someone over there figures out what's going on,
right?
And then that's the end of it. You have no other options.
There's also, I certainly noticed on the iPhone side of it, not on the AV receiver side of it. Like after I upgraded to iOS 15, I had a crazy like memory suck out situation on my iPhone where like I have like 60 gigabytes free on my storage in there, and like within 2 days of upgrading to iOS 15, it was like, you only have 3 gigabytes left. I'm like, well, no, clearly not. And I went in there, looked at the system memory thing, and it, had taken up like 59 gigabytes of like system. I don't know, just system, the gray system bar that meant nothing. I have no idea what was going on there. Completely powering down and rebooting my iPhone kind of fixed it. It brought back like 30 gigabytes, but ultimately I just did a complete wipe and restore from a backup I had made, and that got everything back working. So it's a hassle with an iPhone because most of us haven't plugged our iPhones into a computer in ages because they've wanted to get away from that. You used to plug it in and do everything through iTunes in the old days, and then you always had a backup. It was actually kind of convenient for that, but they've gotten away from that. But you can still re-put in iTunes, plug your iPhone back in, make yourself a backup, and do the full restore process. That got mine working properly again. I don't know if it'll get yours working properly again with AirPlay, but it's worth a shot. That's about the best advice I got.
John in the Philippines. John already has a Panasonic UB820 Ultra HD Blu-ray player, and he tends to get a JVC NX5 4K projector. Once he has a projector, should he still have the HDR optimizer turned on in the Panasonic player? Someone told him he should only have it turned on in the NX5 projector.
Right.
Yeah, I mean, I would think that you wouldn't want it in the player. Why would you want it in the player?
So to clarify, the HDR optimizer versus the frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping in a JVC 4K projector, they are not the same thing. So right. I wanted to leave it as he worded it because I think in his mind they're performing similar functions, but they are not. They are different things. The HDR optimizer in one of Panasonic's Ultra HD Blu-ray players, it is looking at the HDR10 metadata. It takes the values from the HDR10 metadata, and if the values, whether it's the mastering monitor value that's in there or the peak luminance value that's in there, if that exceeds the value that you set, so you're going to choose what type of display do I have, low luminance, middle luminance, high luminance display, and those basically correspond to 500, 1000, 1500 nits. If the values in the HDR10 metadata are higher than what you've set, let's just say you chose 1000, the middle luminance display, then it is going to tone map everything to 1000 nits and send that out of the player with 1000 nit metadata. So let's say the original disc was 1800 nits. The Panasonic player says, oh, I want to tone map that down to 1000 and send it out as 1000 nit metadata. As far as your TV is concerned, it's now receiving a 1000 nit mastered movie instead of an 1800 nit mastered movie. That's what's going on with the HDR optimizer. What the JVCs do with their frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping is completely different. It ignores the metadata 100%. It acts as though there is no metadata there. It just literally looks at every single frame of video coming in, analyzes the brightest thing in that frame, and then tone maps each and every frame that comes into the projector on a frame-by-frame basis. So they're quite separate things. Because the JVC does that, you do not need the HDR optimizer to be active on your Panasonic player.
Right.
It's not going to be of any benefit. You'd rather just have the full signal come in. It's going to ignore the metadata that was there at the beginning of the movie and is just going to look at every single frame and do what it's programmed to do in its tone mapping to preserve as much detail as it possibly can on a frame-by-frame basis. So we ended up at the same result. The people you talked to who said turn the HDR optimizer off in the Panasonic, I agree with that. You don't need it when you have frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping, but I did want to make it clear that HDR optimizer and frame-by-frame dynamic tone mapping are not the same thing.
JVC offers their own projector calibration software that includes an auto calibration function, but they only list 2 meters that are compatible for use: the data color SpyderX, either the Pro or Elite version, or the X-Rite i1 Pro 2. What?
Oh,
Pro
dude,
2.
you don't even know how bad it gets with X-Rite model names.
Lowercase i1 Pro 2.
Yes.
Okay, anyways.
And that's fine.
The SpyderX Pro is more affordable at 170. So that's what John was planning to get. Will it really help improve the picture? Can I say no? Can I just say send the $170 here and Rob and I will split it? Just 2 different Amazon gift cards. It's $85 a piece. Just send it here. Yeah, I honestly do not believe in this day and age that professional calibration of your display really makes a huge amount of difference. It used to make a massive amount of difference, but a professional calibration of a display will make a difference. Mm-hmm. I don't know that you would consider it to be worth it, and I don't think that this would be worth it at all. Full stop. So I would not spend $170 on this. I wouldn't do it. That's just me.
Yeah, it's I'm very wishy-washy on it. Mainly, I've heard people being more critical of the data color SpyderX than it is deserved. Now, I understand why, and that is because basically all the previous data color Spyder colorimeters weren't great. There was like the Spyder 5 that preceded the SpyderX. It used like gel filters in it, and those actually kind of like aged and wore out over time. And even fresh out of the box, if you ran a calibration with a Spyder 5 once and then ran it again right away, you'd get different results. It just wasn't very consistent. And for that reason, there are people who just like, shunned data color Spyder colorimeters in general. The SpyderX is much, much better than any of the previous Spyder colorimeters. Now it's using a proper lens-based system and not gel filters and things like that. People are getting much more consistent results with it. It will even work with full CalMan software. They support the SpyderX. They didn't support previous Spyder colorimeters because they just weren't consistent and good enough, but they do support the SpyderX. So I don't have the same criticism of that meter. Now, the other one that's mentioned in JVC's own literature about which meters you can use with their own projector calibration software, the only other one they mention is the X-Rite i1 Pro 2. That is a spectrophotometer. That is a much slower device. It is more accurate, but it is very slow at taking readings. So that's basically the one spectrophotometer that they support and the one colorimeter that they support in the SpyderX. X-Rite, and I joked about this with Tom just a moment ago, they have a colorimeter called the X-Rite i1 Display Pro. Okay, there's that extra word in there, i1 Display Pro. It's still i1, it's still Pro, but there's the word display in the middle. That's the colorimeter version, the X-Rite i1 Display Pro. And that is also a meter that CalMan software supports using, but that is not listed as being supported by this JVC software. So the JVC software is very limited. They mentioned the data color SpyderX. There's the Pro version or the Elite version. The difference between those two, if you're purchasing them, is the software. The physical meter that comes with both of them is the same. The Pro software is more limited than the Elite software. If you didn't want to use JVC's own software, you would need the Elite software from Datacolor, because that's the only software that's prepared to measure a projector instead of just a monitor, a direct display monitor. So if you wanted to do it with different software, you'd need the elite version of it. Now, ultimately, do I think this is worth buying and doing? The auto setup software from professional calibrators who, this is their living. What they do is professionally calibrate displays. I don't know any of them who use JVC's own software. A lot of them say they don't use it because they don't want to use the Datacolor SpyderX. So that's a bit of a thing. But ultimately, the results they're getting from that are not as good and as comprehensive as the results they can get from CalMan software with a higher end meter. And that is what the professional calibrators have basically all agreed on, that if you want to calibrate everything about your projector, get the better software, the CalMan software, get the better meter, and that can be the i1 display. The i1 display is actually a really, really good meter. You can get it for $250. It's not crazy. So my advice in the end would be, if you want to calibrate yourself, I probably wouldn't bother with JVC's software, even though it's free. I probably wouldn't bother getting or you could get the SpyderX, because you could use that with CalMan software, but you can get the home version of CalMan, which does calibrate projectors, for $145. Okay, so the software itself doesn't have to be crazy expensive. I like the X-Rite i1 display as the meter. That's $250. So yes, it's more expensive than the $170 you were going to spend, but that you can now use on any display, any projector. It goes all the way up to 2,000 nits, which the SpyderX does not do. And you'll have the software and the meter that can basically let you calibrate any display. So I would probably spend more and do it that way.
So John's current screen is an Elite Screens VMAX 2 with a regular Max white fabric. It's rated at 1.1 gain. Mm-hmm. Does he need to upgrade his screen to get the most out of the JVC? Nope.
No.
I think 1.1 gain is just fine.
I mean, I'm assuming you have light control in your room. He's been using whatever projector in that screen thus far. Black is only going to ever be as black as sit down, turn out all the lights, look at the screen. If you can still see the screen in your room, because that's how much ambient light you've got, well, that's as black as the screen is ever going to be. It's never going to be darker than that once the projector turns on. But if you've got good light control, you turn out the lights and you basically can't see your screen in front of you, well, then there's no reason why the Max white fabric needs to be upgraded. That's a smooth 1.1 gain white fabric. It's great.
Hey, Bobby. Bobby says he's still been watching AVRant every week, but he hasn't had a question to send in for a while because he's honestly been pretty happy with his setup. As a reminder, he's in a 12 by 12 room. He painted the ceiling flat black and the walls neutral gray. He's got black acoustic panels to treat the room, and he's running a 5.2.4 speaker configuration with Klipsch reference speakers and dual SVS PV 1000 subs. He's kept his 65-inch Vizio in the room for daytime viewing and gaming, and for movies, he's installed a 92-inch Elite Screens pull-down in front of the TV along with the Epson 8350 projector. If he's had one complaint about his theater, is that the projector's black levels are not impressive. So now, with a budget of about $3,000, he wants an upgrade. What the Vizio? Okay. First, could changing his room greatly improve the current projector's image? For example, if his walls were all covered in black velvet, would his projector's black levels improve, or is it just the projector itself? He's tried samples of a bunch of different screen materials, gray, silver, ambient light rejecting. Some did improve the black levels, but it's also made the white look a bit off, so he didn't like that. Bottom line, does the 8350 need to go? Well, I mean, Rob just said this in the last question, but turn your lights off. That's how black can be.
Yes, that's how black could possibly be if your projector didn't project a gray black. Once the projector is on, your black level very well might be brighter than ambient black in your room.
Sure.
For sure. And it is the case that the 8350 just doesn't project pure black. Its black levels are not, for the price of that projector cost, I'd say it's still a very good high value projector, but its black levels are just not fantastic. They're certainly not the equal of a good LCD television. They're nowhere near what an OLED with perfect black can do.
Right. That's why I scrolled back up
not even
to see if he had an OLED.
Not even remotely close. But a good LCD has much superior black levels to the Epson 8350. The Epson 5050 UB standing for ultra black, has noticeably deeper black levels than the 8350. That's largely what you're paying for, that and the motorized lens in the 5050 UB. So if that's the thing that's bugging you, like, okay, I guess objectively, if you measured it, then covering every surface in your room in black velvet probably would improve it a little bit. But the projector itself is just not producing deep black, and it never will. So
and that's the thing. I mean, I really don't think to it. There is this thought, I think, with people that they can get a projector that will project black, pure black. I mean, you can get closer to pure black. The JVCs
get about as close as you can. The Sony 4Ks would be second best, and then the Epson ultra blacks.
There's only so black a projector can really get because of how it works.
There's still a light source on at all times, and all you're trying to do is not let it through to make black.
Right. So I fear that the answer to your question is yes, you can get closer, but no, it will never look as black as something like your flat panel can look. And if you're looking at the flat panel and saying, I want it to look like that, what you need is a bigger flat panel.
And that's really the very next question.
So he says 92 inches is as large as he can go and $3,000 is as much as he can spend. So he can't get a JVC projector and he can't get an 83-inch OLED, but he could get either an Epson 5050 UB or he could get an 85-inch LCD TV. With the TV on a stand, it wouldn't be that hard to get the same field of view as a 92-inch projector. So what do we think? You already know what I'm going to say. 5050 UB or 85-inch LCD. And if we say go with the TV, which model exactly? There's a Vizio P Quantum X, the Sony X91J in this price range, and the others that might be even better. Yeah, so I think that if you're trying to match the black levels of a flat panel, you just need another flat panel. If you can get the same field of view with a flat panel, then you should get a bigger flat panel instead of getting a projector and being disappointed.
85-inch to 92-inch, that's sitting about 6 inches closer, or moving the display 6 inches closer to you.
Which is exactly what I'm going to do when I upgrade my screen in here.
To me, that is, it'd be different if you said, okay, my budget limit, I mean, like your 65-inch TV versus your 92-inch projection screen. That's such a big difference. You'd have to sit so close to that 65-inch TV that it's a much different experience. But 6 inches closer in a 12 by 12 foot room, like, I'm not seeing that as a problem. Even like if you got the 5050 UB on the same screen that you have, the black levels would improve, but you could replace both of the displays that you have with a display that's better than the Vizio flat panel you already have, so you get an improvement there. Has all the newest gaming features, which your current Vizio doesn't have, and then looks good with the lights on or off, and you only have to sit 6 inches closer to it to get the same field of view. I have to go with that. To me, that just makes much more sense. Now, I would love to be able to point you to an 83-inch OLED because that, if you want black levels, there's your black levels. But yeah, $5,000 is the cheapest price there, and he's got a $3,000 budget. I don't know. Maybe I don't think selling his Vizio and his 8350 would make up the $2,000 difference. Probably not. I don't foresee that being the case. But there are some darn good 85-inch LCD TVs. You've mentioned too that I would look at if you are really into the latest gaming features, that Vizio P Quantum X has had issues when it comes to variable refresh rate. It hasn't, particularly at 120 hertz, it's never worked properly at 120 hertz. It's been mostly okay at 60 hertz with variable refresh rate, but there's been some little hinkiness there, and the replacement, the 85-inch P Quantum X that ends in a J, that'll be coming up in 2022. There'll be a wait before you can get that one, and we'll have to wait and see if things are improved on that front. The X91J from Sony, that's part of the X90J series, the 85-inch in particular got a 91 instead of a 90 for some reason. Overall, a very nice looking television. It doesn't have VRR yet. It's supposed to. It's supposed to get a firmware update to add variable refresh rate, but it doesn't have the problems that the X900H has had. 120 hertz doesn't look blurry on the X90J series. It doesn't have a lot of zones of local dimming. But what Sony has done with the zones of local dimming that it does have is pretty good. They've set things up. Sony tends to go for, let's retain as much shadow detail as we can. Let's reduce blooming by just not over brightening things. So in general, HDR doesn't look as contrasty as it might on other displays because they don't like ramp the black down as far as it can possibly go because they're trying not to have blooming around subtitles or like little stars on a space background. They're trying to retain all that detail, so they'll let the black level rise a little bit in that instance. And then on the bright highlights, they try not to over brighten everything so that you can see these kind of large zones of local dimming if you do that. But they do a good job of retaining all the details. So like cinema purists often like the way the Sonys look, but if you want the spectacular, that's really black and that's really bright, they don't really deliver that. And there's no right or wrong, that's personal preference. So if what you want is, oh, that looks really black and that looks really bright, if you want that mega contrasty look, Samsung is where you would want to go. I would try to get you to a QN90A. That is the flagship 4K model. That is the Neo QLED flagship 90A because it looks as close to an OLED as any LCD that you can buy today gets. It has the deepest black levels, the highest contrast, the brightest highlights in HDR. And they are running some crazy sales on that series right now. I'm pretty sure the 85-inch QN90i, I saw it at $3,200. So can you scrounge up another $200? Because if that's what you want, is that mega contrasty look, that's the model to get. You could look at the one step down from that, the QN85A. Very similar, but just not as many local dimming zones. That's basically the the sum of it there, and that would get you to the $3,000 price point. So hopefully that's enough information for you to decide. If you're a cinephile and you care less about mega contrasty look, but you want to make sure all the like shadow detail is there and not stuff doesn't get clipped off, but you sacrifice deep black and bright highlights in HDR to get it, the Sony is probably the better choice. So I think that should be enough.
So I'm going to say you should wait.
Okay.
That's what I'm going to say. I know that you probably don't want to hear this, but this is my thought. You have a fairly decent LCD, sure, and you have a fairly not entry level, but fairly decent projector. Mm-hmm. And what you're trying to do is to take it you're already taking it to the next level, right? You've already done the painting of the room, which is more than I've done. So you've already taken it to the next level. So my thought is this: why go with something that does most of what you want?
Okay.
And instead of everything you want,
right?
Right. Not that you're gonna, this is gonna be your forever TV, because there's no such thing as a forever TV, but save up for the OLED. Just
there's that.
Spend a little bit extra time. Just delay this gratification a little bit, knowing that you're going to get the very best black levels you possibly can. And I think that you are the perfect sort of candidate for somebody to do that. Like, yes, you've already got $3,000. All right. You've already saved more money than most people want to spend on their entire home theater system, like combined.
Right.
And they want to spend like $2,500 on their TV or $2,000 on their TV and $150 on everything else. So you're already above that. So maybe just wait a little bit, and then maybe even sell the projector for right now and see how much money you can get for it, and then see how close that gets you, and then just a little bit here, a little bit there, and then get that.
The forecasts are that next year OLED prices are expected to drop by a not insignificant amount. They're talking like 10-12% across the board, because LG finally has their Chinese OLED manufacturing plant fully up and running at full tilt. So that means they can move all the 55 and 65 inch production over there and only focus on the big screen sizes, which also, because there's enough glass left over, leads to the small screen sizes. Those will be coming out of their Korean plant, but because they can shift all of the 55 and 65 over to their Chinese plant now that it's fully up at full tilt, it means prices are going to come down across the board on OLEDs next year. So I'm not against that. I think that's all the information you need, hopefully, to make a decision.
Let us know what you do. Nelson has a Denon X3600H receiver, which apparently is it's just everywhere these days. Yeah. He also has an IOTA VX SA3 integrated stereo amp and an IOTA VX PA3 stereo amp.
I mean, at least that's stereo amp and power amplifier, maybe SAPA.
Yeah, but the SA is integrated stereo, and the other one's also a stereo. Whatever.
Yeah, it's not integrated.
Both IOTA amps are rated at 50 watts per channel into 8 ohms, but they can be bridged to deliver 100 watts into 8 ohms mono. That's what he did. The IOTA SA and 3 and PA3 are both bridged. He's using them to power his front, left, and right speakers. Now he's decided to also like to power his center speaker externally, and he ordered an Emotiva BassAx A2 stereo amp for that purpose. It's rated at 160 watts into 8 ohms, both channels driven, but Nelson seems to be under the impression that he needs to use both channels of his Emotiva to power his center. He says that he has a RCA Y splitter, so he can connect the Denon's center pre-out to both inputs on the Emotiva amp. But then how does he connect the two sets of binding posts to a center speaker? Don't ever do that.
You don't need to. Yeah.
Yeah. First of all, you don't need to, right? You just need to put one RCA into one channel of your BassAx, whatever. It's a 2-channel amp.
It's a stereo amp.
2-channel amp, yeah. And you just have an extra channel that's not doing anything.
Yeah, or you could connect your front, left, and right pre-outs to the new Emotiva, which has a higher wattage rating than your IOTA amplifiers. And then if you still want to use one of the IOTA amplifiers in bridge mode, 100 watts into one channel, and use that to power your center. That's probably what I would do. That's
exactly what I would do. I would not use those other two things to do the things that they're doing.
So the BassX A2 is not set up to be bridgeable. I mean, obviously someone who's into electronics could get in there and solder things inside if they wanted to, but I wouldn't do that.
Speakers?
I don't know. He didn't say what his speakers are.
I mean, if his speakers, you could. And I don't think you should do this.
Right.
You could bi-amp your center channel if you really wanted to, if it has two sets of binding posts.
Yeah, the capability to even do that. But no,
that's ludicrous.
Like if you're good with 100 watts powering your front, left, and rights, I don't see why you wouldn't be good with 100 watts powering your center and 160 watts powering your left and rights. Like that. Right. So to me, that's what I would do. The Emotiva now powers your front, left, right, and one of the bridged IOTA amplifiers now powers your center.
So how does he tell the Denon to use the center pre-out? Well, first, you have to turn the receiver on and off twice. Okay? Then you have to take the remote, hold it, point it directly at the ceiling, and then spin around in a circle 3 times. Counterclockwise. It's important that you go counterclockwise.
Doesn't it depend on the hemisphere?
No. Don't be ridiculous. What are you?
Yes, don't be ridiculous.
Don't be ridiculous. Then you stare at your receiver and you say, center channel on. It's a verbal command, center channel on, and it'll work. Guaranteed every time.
So the good news is, even if you did all that, it would work because the center channel pre-out is always hot.
You ruin all my fun.
That's right.
He's spinning around a circle right now.
on the Denon receivers, all of those pre-out plugs, they're always hot. There's always a signal coming out of all the pre-outs. I know where this confusion probably came from, which is if you go into the settings, the manual speaker settings for the Denon, there is a line in that setting that says pre-out. And you'll only have two options in an Atmos configuration. You'll have the options for fronts or whatever your rearmost overhead speakers are. If that's rear heights or top rears, you'll only have those two options. So he was probably looking at that. Here's a pre-out setting. It's right there in the settings menu. It lets me choose either fronts or rear heights. And in his case, he's chosen fronts so far. Where's the setting to turn on the center? Well, all that's going on there is your X3600H has 9 amplifiers built in. He could actually power his complete system that he has right now just with the receiver, but he doesn't want to. He wants to use external amplification, and that's fine. But all that pre-out setting in the Denon is for is if you did 11 speakers, you could only power 9 of them with the Denon. It only has 9 amplifiers. So which 2 out of those 11 speakers must be powered externally? That's all that pre-out setting is for. So you can say, my front, left, and right are powered externally. All other 9 speakers in this 11 speaker setup are powered by the Denon if I want to. Or my rear heights are powered externally. All other 9 are powered by the Denon. But you have the option of powering any of those 11 speakers externally at any time. The pre-outs for all the channels are always on.
That's right. Though the spinning around helps.
Sure.
He has a pair of Focal SIB Evo speakers on hand. Can he hook both of those up to the Emotiva as well? No. You could, but then you can't put anything else on it. He just wants to make sure he makes use of all the equipment he has as best as possible. At present, he's running a 5 point, don't know how many subs, 0.2. So 5.x.2 configuration with upward firing Dolby enabled front speakers. So yeah, you've got 7 channels that are not subwoofers. Okay,
yes.
And your receiver
at present,
so your receiver doesn't have to be told to do anything special that it's not already doing.
No,
I think so. Yeah, you're gonna have you can have one extra amp basically left over that's not doing anything.
Right.
If you wanted, you could use that not in bridge mode to do your rear speakers.
You sure could. I mean, if
your surrounds.
If it's just like I say, the most he would have at present is 9 speakers, and you could power all 9 of them just with the Denon by itself and not have any external amplifiers, and that will function just fine. So if you wanted to now go to 5 point however many subs 0.4, you take those SIB Evo speakers, those Focal SIB Evo speakers, and use them as, rear heights, or maybe you move the upward firing speakers to the back of the room and you use them.
I don't even know what those things are. Are they
front
big?
Heights? No, they're compact. They're not as small as the what did we used to love there? The ones you have.
Oh, the birds.
The birds, yeah. They're not as small as that, but they're compact. But however you want to deploy them. So, you could just power them with the Denon, but if you're saying, okay, I've got these 2 Iota amplifiers on hand, and now I've got this Emotiva amplifier on hand, and I want to use them all, I would do what we said originally, power your front, left, and right with the Emotiva, use one of the Iota amplifiers in the bridged mode to power your center. Now you could run 50 watts per channel. You could put the other Iota back into stereo mode, not bridged mode, and use that to power wherever these SIB Evo speakers go. Or they could power any of the other. Maybe they power your surrounds, and your Denon only powers the 4 overhead speakers, right? That would work.
Well, yes. All right.
Yeah.
Gurinder has a couple of soundproofing questions for his basement. First up, there's a bedroom in the basement, and he'd like to reduce the noise from upstairs. It's mostly footfall noise that is bothersome. Sometimes the TV upstairs as well. The ceiling is drop tile. He's used fiberglass acoustic tiles, and they seem to reduce the high frequencies, but not the bass and not the footfall noise. Mm-hmm. There's insulation in the ceiling joists above the drop ceiling tiles. So what does he need to do? Looking at soundproofing companies' suggestions, should he add 1 or 2 layers of drywall with green glue directly to the underside of the upstairs subfloor? Will that have much of an effect and be enough? Or does he also need to isolate the drop tile ceiling grid? This sounds like, if it's base in the, it sounds like a structural. It's coming through the structure of the house.
And the footfall noise, obviously, that's physical impact vibration that's coming through whatever the floor is upstairs. Right.
So yeah, you need to basically decouple. I don't know what you decouple, though. The walls, the ceiling, the everything. I think that it's going to come through the structure of the home. So
it's a big challenge, all right.
It is.
Even over at Soundproofing Company, in some of their educational articles, and I totally agree with this, when it's something like footfall noise from upstairs to downstairs, the place you want to try and treat that is the floor upstairs as opposed to the ceiling in the basement, because trying to stop it at the ceiling in the basement is not stopping it at the source. The source is the floor upstairs. That's where the footfall is happening. That's where the bass is getting through from the television system upstairs. What they show in their ceiling structure, where they add a couple of layers of drywall with green glue in between to the underside of the subfloor, that does help because you're just adding sheer mass, and if it's sound that's coming down into the bays of the ceiling joists, you're preventing a good amount of that. It's not as good as actually treating whatever the floor is upstairs. Like if it's hardwood floor upstairs, if you could pull up all the hardwood and put a rubber underlay under that and then put that back down, or switch to carpet with a big thick pad, like that's going to do more for the footfall noise. But I'm assuming he doesn't want to tear up whatever the floor is upstairs. So what could be done to the basement ceiling? So this layers of drywall with green glue directly to the subfloor, it does help, but then you still have the joists themselves. There's still the vibration that's physically coming down the joists. Now, a drop tile ceiling, the drop tile ceiling grid, that is already decoupling the ceiling tiles from the joists. It's not that like if you put sound clips to hold the metal grid, it would make a big difference, because that's not really where the sound is coming through. What you could do is put a big layer of mass-loaded vinyl above your ceiling tiles, right? So before you put the ceiling tiles into the grid, you put a big layer of mass-loaded vinyl as contiguous as you can make it, right? Just sufficient gaps to get around the grid where it's holding it. Again, you're adding mass, you're adding this limp membrane that's helping to decouple some of that. It's not going to be perfect in any case, but both of those things will improve the situation, not fix it. I think that's about the best way I could say. It's not going to be nothing if you did that. It's going to be better, but it's whether you'd like eliminate footfall noise, I don't think so, because that's actually going to come through the joists themselves. I don't think you can eliminate it.
Right. It's you want to keep it out of the room downstairs, but what you really need to do is deal with the room upstairs.
Stop it in the room upstairs. That's really the solution.
So, I mean, I don't know what I imagine the floor upstairs is probably hardwood.
I would think so if it's footfall noise. Yeah.
So, I mean, carpet, rugs, anything that you can do to put a layer of smooshy material between the foot and the floor will make more difference than just about anything else. And adding a layer of mass-loaded vinyl underneath, I mean, that just sounds so expensive. I'm gonna be honest with you.
And it's not easy because that stuff is
not
heavy.
Easy.
So securing it properly to the, because like you can't just lay it on top of your fiberglass ceiling tiles because you're gonna end up with bulges coming down. Vinyl. So it needs to be
that
secured.
Stuff is heavy too.
It's
the name it tells you mass-loaded vinyl.
Yeah, it's
not
trivial.
Supposed to be light.
It's not trivial.
Yeah, the simplest, cheapest, most cost-effective solution here is just to do something upstairs, and whatever you do upstairs is going to make more difference than anything you could do downstairs.
Yeah. But if there are no other options, then what you've suggested, the drywall with green glue to the bottom of the subfloor, that, like I say, it helps a bit. It doesn't fix it, but it does help. And if it's still bad, then there's really not much else you can do besides put the mass-loaded vinyl layer above your drop tile ceiling. It'll help. And that's about as good as you can do.
In his basement theater, he constructed some soffits on the ceiling about 15 years ago to cover the ductwork. He didn't even know what a home theater was back then, and he wasn't overly concerned about looks at the time, so one soffit is bigger than the other because it had to conceal a cold air return, and neither soffit was constructed with soundproofing in mind. The rest of the ceiling is all drop tile ceiling, and it has come in very handy on more than one occasion, so he doesn't really want to switch to a completely drywall ceiling. He mainly wants to redo the soffits. He'll reframe them so that they are the same size, and he'll get them a bit more snug to the ductwork so they are a bit smaller. He can insulate them and finish them with 2 layers of drywall with green glue. But above the soffits, they're still opened to the ceiling joist bay. So is there even any point to double drywall and green glue when the rest of the ceiling will still be drop tiles? He'd like to better isolate the theater from the ductwork, both for sound getting into the theater through the ducts and from sound getting out of the theater. Would it be beneficial to wrap the ducts themselves? What should he do for the soffits and the rest of the drop tile ceiling? I don't see any point of doing 2 layers of drywall.
Yeah, the double drywall and green glue just on the soffits when they're still open above to the ceiling joist, and you've got a drop tile. That isn't doing anything for you. That's just added cost without added benefit.
Getting noise from coming in and out of your HVAC to returns and stuff like that is all about distance and flexibility and turns. So you don't want something that's going to physically rattle because it's stiff. You don't want that, and if you can make it curve a couple of times with some flexible ducting, that will reduce, like wrapping it with insulation. I mean, I don't know that would physically do a ton, other than it will, if it is moving around in there, it'll essentially put a layer that'll keep it from rattling against the drywall if you're going to make it super duper tight. So I don't know that will make a huge amount of difference, because the actual sound that would be coming out of the tube. Right. I mean, so wrapping the tube with insulation doesn't stop the air going whoosh as it comes through. So you're trying to stop the whoosh, and you're trying to stop the sound from the theater from going back through
into
that
the
tube
ducts and vibrating physically throughout the rest of the house. Now, if you're going to be addressing ductwork anyway, I'm always a favor of, let's do things just from an efficiency standpoint, which is aluminum tape around all of the joints, if that hasn't been done, because a ton of efficiency gets lost through every connection in your ductwork, and it doesn't have to if you just cover all of those joints in aluminum tape, or even the duct butter solution is much better than nothing, and a lot of houses just have nothing, and at that point you're at like less than 70% efficiency, and you don't have to be just by doing up your seams, and then wrapping all your ducts in proper insulation, which is the insulation that has the aluminum cover on it as well. That's a good idea anyway. That's just from an efficiency standpoint. That's a good idea. So if you're going to be doing it, I'm in favor of doing it strictly from an efficiency standpoint, and then it does also help reduce some of the sound transfer as well. So there's no downside other than you're paying the money to do it. But yeah, if you can't replace like the entire duct line with flexible ducting, at least get a section replaced with a flexible joint, because they have those. It's the flexible joint that goes in between 2 sections of solid duct, and just having that flexible joint in there, that's your damping for the physical vibrations. If it's a solid run of, solid metal pipe, then that transmits the vibrations very easily through the whole house. You're just putting in a circuit breaker there. A flexible piece can go in there. But if you can replace like the entire round duct that's feeding into your theater area with flexible duct, so much the better. That's like having all of it be the flexible part instead of just one little section. For treating the rest of the ceiling, I mean, it's the same situation as the bedroom. The majority of the ceiling in this theater here is drop tile ceiling. So your real only options are, you could attach drywall with green glue to the subfloor. Like I say, that's not a fix because the joists are still coming down, but it does improve things somewhat. You're adding damping and mass to the subfloor upstairs itself. It does also reduce some of the transmission from the theater up through the subfloor just by virtue of having more mass and some damping on the subfloor itself. So that's not nothing. You're still going to have the insulation in the ceiling bays. You're still going to have your drop tile ceiling grid, and that is your decoupling to that surface. So then it becomes, do you put a layer of mass-loaded vinyl across the whole top of that? Because as contiguous as you can, tuck tape over all of the seams that are necessary to go around the grid. Huge hassle, but it will improve sound transmission. Or do you just upgrade all the ceiling tiles? Because if you just have, if you have the super thin ceiling tiles, you can definitely do better than that. If it's just the 1 inch thick fiberglass tiles, those are like having a 1 inch thick absorption panel on your wall, but they're not really soundproofing. You need the ones that have like a solid backing on them. Those will actually reduce some of the sound. But again, you kind of want to tuck tape over the seams as much as you can, because all of those gaps where all the grids are, that's allowing sound through there. So it's a challenge with a drop ceiling. In the end, the contiguous mass-loaded vinyl is about as good as you can do. Major hassle to install, but there's not a lot else you can do. And I wouldn't bother with 2 layers of drywall on the soffits. That's not going to be worth it.
Not unless you're going to completely box them in, and even then, I don't even know that would make any difference, whatever. So any Canadian sites that sell soundproofing products and materials? I don't know.
A couple. Hush City SP, SP for soundproofing, hushcitysp.com. They didn't go with a .ca address, but they've got locations in Vancouver and Calgary. And then Acoustigard, Acoustigard.com again. I don't know why they didn't go .ca, but they're in Mississauga, Ontario. So you got West Coast and East Coast options.
There you go. No central, because nobody lives there. This question is from Rob. Not this Rob, different Rob. What's up with IKEA's GUNNLAUG sound absorbing curtains? Are they the real deal? They're described as being made of chenille.
I have no idea. That's not how you spell Chanel, so I literally copied it from their website, so that is how they spelled it.
Anyways, they're made from some sort of yarn with a special weave that creates a soft, lightweight fabric that softens sounds such as clattering dishes or people talking. They claim it is 50 to 100% better at absorbing medium high sound frequencies than other fabrics with a similar quality and weight. So, okay, no claims about reducing bass, and at least that's honest, but can lightweight curtains that don't even block all the light coming through them really do anything acoustically? Is it a case where being 100% better than nothing is still nothing? Well, you have to look at what they compared it to. They are 50 to 100% better at absorbing the sound frequencies than other fabrics with a similar quality and weight. It is not that hard to be 50 to 100% better than nothing.
And these are light and sheer. I mean, these are light and sheer curtains. So, yeah. There's no magic. These are not magic.
50%. I mean, than other fabrics. Than other acoustically transparent fabrics. Well, you got. How did you even do the math? How did you divide by 0? What is happening here?
100% of nothing is still nothing.
Still nothing.
Okay, well, look, I haven't used them, but they're not magic, and magic doesn't exist, and these are sheer lightweight curtains. So, I mean, is there a possibility that I hold up a similarly lightweight sheer curtain material to my mouth and I blow through it, and the air moves even more easily through that other fabric than through this fabric? I would say that's possible. I would say it is possible that these are less acoustically transparent than some other fabrics. I think that is entirely possible, within the realm of possibility. And for that reason alone, it could be 50 or 100% better than completely acoustically transparent. These are in no way an acoustic treatment. These are in no way an acoustic barrier. I don't know why they even market the acoustic part of it. It makes... I don't know.
Because somebody's going to buy it. That's why.
I guess so.
Someone's going to buy it. They're going to buy it. They're going to say it reduces sound transmission. And
just look at them. Just look at them. If you look at that curtain in their own pictures on their website,
there's a gray version that they have next to a window that doesn't block the light coming out of the window.
Yeah,
you can still see the light.
Yeah, easily. I mean, it diffuses it a little bit. You know, it's not like literally clear transparent, but
I would feel so comfortable reviewing these curtains without ever having actually touched these curtains.
Yeah, this isn't one I'm too worried. Yeah, these are not an acoustic treatment. These are not an acoustic barrier. Yeah.
Gav in Australia. Gav uses Amazon Music HD via a Fire Stick TV.
I love the names. And you got to get it right, Tom, because there's different models. It has to be specific.
I know there is. I know.
Yeah. Otherwise, we might be talking about the wrong thing here.
One of these days, these names are just going to break me. Somebody's going to come up with the stupidest name, and I'm just going to walk off the podcast, and that's going to be it. I'm going to be just done. I'm just going to say, that's it. I can't do it anymore. I'm sorry. Your stupid names are too stupid.
Mm-hmm.
Fire TV Stick 4K.
Yep.
Not to be confused with the Fire Stick TV 4K, which is a completely different product, you moron.
I mean, the problem is Amazon does have their own televisions now, so that doesn't confuse things at all.
Tracks are offered with bit and sampling rates up to 24-bit 192 kilohertz, which makes no audible difference. So he's got the Fire TV stick plugged into his Marantz NR1711 receiver. That's a slimline, if I remember correctly.
It is, yes.
And the receiver is plugged into his Hisense M7000 TV, which is probably equivalent to something over here, but I don't know what it is. He needs the TV. Where are you going?
I think Tom's looking at his dog.
My dog just left the room. Tanel must be home. My wife must be home. He needs the TV on in order to navigate the Music HD interface, and with this connection path, the audio seems to be limited to 16-bit. His Marantz info screen says it's getting 16-bit 192 kilohertz from the Fire TV stick.
Still 192 kilohertz. The least important thing, but anyway, there it is.
It doesn't seem to be the Marantz that is limiting things, because if he uses the HEOS app, Amazon Music HD plays in 24-bit 192 kilohertz. The question is, can you hear the difference between the two? Can you actually hear the difference between the two? Because if you can't hear the difference, there is no difference. All right. He's come across other owners online who are reporting the same issue, and they suspected this the HDMI handshake between the receiver and the TV that is resulting in the 16-bit limitation. Do we know of a workaround? What are our thoughts? Stop using the stick when HEOS works just fine? I mean, why would you?
He doesn't like the HEOS interface, and that's fine. And I'm not sure. I'm not sure if Amazon Music or if the Fire TV stick supports more music streaming services than HEOS does. That's possible. I'm not actually sure if that's the case, but he's mostly sticking to Amazon
Well, like
Music
I whispered
HD.
earlier, I mean, did you just do a audible test between the two streams and can you honestly say with any sort of, objective certainty, not just I think I might hear something, but like this is clearly better than the other one.
I pressed the info screen to make sure I could see the numbers, and then I heard a difference.
There's no world in which I believe there is an actual difference between the subjective experience of listening to these two streams. So I would say stop pressing the info button and get on with your life. But since you're not gonna do that, Rob, is there a workaround?
Okay, well, as far as a workaround, because I don't know this for certain, but I do believe it would be that the television is probably limited to 16 bits. Yeah. Being a Hisense and not the highest end Hisense television, that would make a lot of sense. So that probably is the case, that the entire signal chain needs to all be compatible, and it always goes to the lowest common denominator. So that being limited to 16 bits would not shock me. Definitely the Marantz can accept a 24-bit 192 kilohertz signal. I have more thoughts on that, but he asked what are our thoughts second. So as far as the workaround goes, the workaround would be plugging the Fire TV stick or the output of the Marantz into an HD Fury. Because if it is the HDMI handshake, then it means that the EDID from the television is what's limiting you to 16 bits in this signal chain.
Oh my God. Here's a $250 solution for your $0 problem.
Yes, but I mean, that would be the workaround, Tom. Is there one? Yeah. Getting an HD Fury for audio
Let's just
purposes,
buy a better TV, because clearly that's the problem here. If your TV is a limiting factor and you really want to see 24 on it, the other thing you could do is just buy a Post-it note, write 24 on it, and then press the info button and stick it over the top of that 16.
Yeah. Now, what are our thoughts? I have additional thoughts on this because, okay, in your Marantz, let's say he's even taking the step of when I listen to music, I turn Audyssey off completely, because Audyssey only goes as high as 24-bit 48 kilohertz. You're never hearing 96 kilohertz or 192 kilohertz sampling if Audyssey is on, because the highest sampling that Audyssey goes to is 48 kilohertz in your Marantz. It can do 24-bit, but you'd be at 48, so you wouldn't be getting the 192. Now, the info screen of what the Marantz says it's getting in as a signal, that could still be 24, 192. But if Audyssey is on, that's now been sampled down to 48 kilohertz. And so some people know about that. And so when they're listening to high-res music, they make sure to turn Audyssey off. But do you still have any digital processing in your Marantz of any kind? I'm talking certainly any sort of upmixing, if you're ever doing any upmixing, but bass management, just basic bass management.
Yeah.
Because if that is on, you are limited to 48 kilohertz. The bass management does not go beyond 48 kilohertz. So this is what I guess your pure direct listening mode is for. The pure direct turns everything off. It turns off your bass management, turns off Audyssey, turns off all digital processing. And I guess that's what it's for. And if that's what you're using, then that's what's there. Now your bass is not going to be properly integrated or EQ'd anymore. It means your front, left, and right speakers are playing full range and you're getting whatever bass response you get out of them because there's no correction being applied and no filters of any kind being applied. But, you know, that's something to be aware of, because I am 100% with Tom on this. I don't care about the higher bit depths and sampling rates because they just don't make a difference. You don't need them. Your ears can't hear higher than 20 kilohertz. They probably can't hear 20 kilohertz if you're, older than about 18 years old. But the 192 kilohertz sampling rate is ridiculous. We don't need sampling rates that high. Some argument can be made for the greater bit depth because that is a greater dynamic range, but are you honestly listening to music that has a greater dynamic range than 96 decibels? Because that's what 16 bits can deliver to you, is the loudest sound being 96 decibels louder than the quietest sound. And almost all the music is like 3 decibels in dynamic range, maybe as much as 12. So ultimately...
can you imagine going from a sound that you can still hear and then adding 96 dB to it and saying, that's not too loud?
Yeah.
So there's no world where I believe that.
I just don't think this is necessary at all. But if you want to do it all and you want to see the numbers on the info, then you need an HD Fury.
There you go.
That's your workaround.
I hate those numbers.
Yeah,
I know. I think the Post-it note solution is the best solution. Just throw it up there. Rafael. A couple of months ago, Rafael wrote us saying he wanted to upgrade his Polk RTI speaker since he wanted a clearer, crisper sound. And we said that speaker upgrade might be worth considering, but we cautioned that he should focus on his room first since he had no acoustic treatments and the only absorptive things in his room were a couple of dog beds and presumably also the dogs, which would be weird to have dog beds and no dogs. So he added panels on his front wall behind each of his speakers. Panels at the first reflection points on his right wall. The left side of the room is open. A substantial amount of panels on his back wall and a large area rug with thick padding underneath. He also bought and returned some Valencia seating. Didn't say why. Yeah. So he's still using his old sectional for seating. Didn't like it. That's fine. Good. A simple clap test made it obvious that the echo in the room was definitely reduced, and he took some room EQ wizard measurements to show that a clear reduction in decay times, so he's happy with all of that. But now, back to his speakers. With the room treated, he hears a significant difference. There's greater clarity in the high frequencies, obvious with hi-hat cymbals, for example. But if he turns on all-channel stereo with his Polk FXI surround, still sound clearer and brighter. He always preferred the way his surround sounded. He just wanted his fronts to match. The room treatments helped, but it didn't get him all the way there. So his front towers are older than his surrounds. So they're all Polk. But did Tweeter Tech just improve a whole bunch in between? Or maybe his RTI 12 towers were just never all that good, or maybe they're just old and worn out now. At this point, what do we think he should do? Is it time for a speaker upgrade now? He was mainly considering either KEF Q series or the ELAC Unify before. He doesn't have stores that are local to him for in-store auditions. He's fine with buying and returning, but narrowing the field would be helpful. What do we say? First of all, I mean, tweeter technology hasn't changed that much in the last forever. I mean, there are different types of tweeters that are out there, but not in what you're talking about. No. It is possible that the crossover was set so that there was a high frequency roll off on the towers that isn't present on your surrounds, or maybe they're just physically close. The physical proximity to them makes them sound brighter.
The FXI also, as far as I'm aware, they're either bipolar or dipole.
Right.
So
okay.
I'm pretty darn sure that's the case with those.
The which ones?
The FXI surrounds.
Oh, the surrounds. So they're, a different line anyway. So, anyways, the Q series. You sound like you want a lot of high end information. So, and is he? He's not. Where is he? Is he here? Rafael?
I'm not completely sure. I'm not.
Yeah. Okay. So we don't know what you have access to as far as shopping. So the KEF Q series would be worth a listen. I think that they may or may not tickle your fancy.
Right.
The ELAC Unify, are those those are the newer ones, right?
They're the higher end, right? There's the Debut 2.0, right. And then the series up from that is the Unify. That does have the concentric drivers that Andrew Jones really does favor. So they are the higher end ones. But in general, the Andrew Jones designed ELAC speakers, they have a little bit of a high frequency roll off, which I've talked about before. I don't consider that a bad thing. It's very beneficial in a lot of cases, but it does sound like he's very focused on crisp, clear, high frequentions. And
this is a man who should be looking at clips, to be honest with you.
You really are. You are a person who should be looking at clips.
Or just any sort of high, horn-loaded tweeter or a.
Well, I was really thinking the HSUs, because I like those a lot. I like them. More than the Klipsch's, but they still have that horn-loaded efficiency and that extended high treble. Right.
So, but the question we have for you then is, where the heck are you? So, not that people in America or Canada can't be named Rafael. I just, I see that name and I think you're from Europe or something like that, or maybe South America. Who knows? So, horn-loaded speakers, you could. It depends on your budget. You could look at some of the folded ribbon tweeters and those sorts of designs as well. Tend to have a lot more energy up at the top end. Even things like the SVS, the Ultra Series speakers have plenty of high-end information up there.
Yeah.
I'm not sure if they're going to be quite as crisp as you want them to be.
Yeah, something like the Martin Logan Motion series.
Sure.
Because
those should be available no matter where you are.
Yeah, because the electrostatics, that's getting very pricey and a very different design. But the Motion
Motion's
series,
not that bad.
they're not too bad price-wise, and that's that folded ribbon tweeter design. And even if you don't have a lot of shops to go audition, Martin Logan, like KEF and like Klipsch, is really widely available. So that's definitely one. So yeah, when you're talking about wanting the crisp, clear highs, my immediate thought doesn't go to ELAC. It also doesn't go to Polk, because way back when he asked the original question. I still stand by this. And honestly, he heard the results for himself and measured the results, and he's happy that he did treat his room, because I was like, that's really your biggest limiting factor right now. We both went to that right away, and we were like, once you treat the room, you might like your Polk speakers a whole lot more than you do without the room treated. But both of us agreed, Polk RTI series, that is a series of speakers where we're like, yeah, there's upgrades to be had. We're not going to tell you that there's no circumstance where that's, a tell it like it is, as close to ideal and perfect speaker as there is, and there's no way you can improve it. No, you can improve on the Polk RTI speakers. So now that you've treated the room, heard an improvement, but didn't get you all the way there, I'm more on board with a potential speaker upgrade. I think you'll get more out of that speaker upgrade than you would have if the room were never treated. So
especially by treating those first reflection points and behind your head, that sort of thing. Because they're like, I want more high-end information. Well, you throw more high information in the really reflective room, and it maybe sounds 10 times worse.
Right.
You don't really know.
But one question is he also intending to replace his Polk FXI surround speakers.
You have to be ready to do that. I have to say, you have to be ready to do that.
Any of these, I'm not expecting a perfect timbre match once you change the fronts.
Yeah.
That would be a bit of a challenge. So yeah, I think
we are steering you towards, based on what you say you want, a different style speaker than what you currently have.
Because the Polk RTIs definitely have a high frequency roll off. That is on purpose, and I would say to the point of like no longer telling it like it is, like more than the ELACs do. So yeah, that doesn't super shock me. If that's the thing that you're keying in on and really want that high frequency extension and detail, I wouldn't be shocked for someone to say, I got Polk RTIs and it's not giving me everything I want. I'm like, yeah, that makes a lot of sense. There's no red flag there in my mind. So if you were already leaning Kef, I agree with Tom. That's absolutely worth an audition. If you can just get a pair of bookshelves to start, because maybe those end up being your surrounds after we're done with this. But, just to get that in there and audition that if it's not easy for you to hear them in a store. If you are in North America and HSU is easy to order and get a hold of, I do think that's a good horde-loaded option to try. You could absolutely still audition some Klipsch. I mean, if you can afford the Reference Premiere, that's a series that I quite like. I think the Reference Premiere series from Klipsch is worth a listen. So that would be in there too. Martin Logan Motion Series, SVS Ultra. Almost anywhere you should be able to get and return SVS Ultra pretty easily. So again, a pair of bookshelf speakers, they're very good on that. So I think that's a good smattering. We've narrowed the field somewhat. That's still a lot of choices, but I think that's a good smattering that should be available to you.
The upside of the Ultras from the other ones that we're kind of recommending is that you have a better shot of having your surrounds stick around. So if you're worried about upgrading everything and you're like, I'm not sure I want to do all that, then definitely give the Ultras a try, because those are most likely to, or maybe the Kefs too, perhaps. But
maybe the SVS Ultra, I agree, that's probably going to get the closest, and they're probably the easiest to audition and return, to be honest. So they're almost like why not? Even if you find something you already like, compare them to some SVS Ultras, I think.
All right, my wife's puttering around the other room. I was going to try to do one more question, but I think it's going to take a while to answer. So
this
we
one
are
would
going.
Be long, the next one.
Yeah, we're going to stop there. Who do we have left?
We have Andy, Infinite Gary, and John. That's all right. We're still 3 left. We'd put a dent in it.
Good. This is AVRant, the podcast that answers your home theater and AV questions. Get your questions answered. All you have to do is ask. You ask by emailing us at question@avrant.com. We want to thank our listeners of the week. We want to thank Nelson for going to avrant.com. Click on the Buy Us a Cup of Coffee link. Did I already say this? I feel like I'm... Anyways.
At the beginning.
And he said, and sent us a PayPal donation, as well as our 133 patrons over at patreon.com, including James and Bertrand.
Yes, indeed. Nelson, thank you very much for the PayPal donation, and patreon.com/AVRant podcast for anyone who would like to sign up for an automatic monthly donation. Big thanks to our 133 patrons over there, including James and Bertrand.
I want to thank Eric and Vance for the Amazon gift cards, and Nelson for the Movie Anywhere codes.
Yeah, Eric and Vince, thank you very much for sending those Amazon gift cards. I think each of us got one, but we'll both have to check our emails to find out if that was true. Nelson, thanks for those Movies Anywhere codes. Hopefully Tom gets good use out of those.
Yeah. And thanks to Rob, Gav, Andy, John, Luke, and Bertrand for sending us notes of thanks.
Indeed, Rob, Gav, Andy, John, Luke, and Bertrand, thank you all very much for the notes of gratitude and encouragement. They are definitely appreciated. Thank you also to all the people in the UK who corrected my pronunciation of Leicester Square. That was very nice. They were all very nice about it. They were all like, yeah, that's, they understand. They didn't rake me over the coals for not being a local. So I appreciate that. That was very nice. And thank you to everybody who continues to listen and send in your questions. If you have a question that you would like answered by 6 AV podcast hosts, that's Ara and Braden from the HT Guys, DJ from the Brightside Home Theater Podcast, Tom, Rob, and Lee, all of us from AVRant. If you want all 6 of us to weigh in on a question, send that in. It's your last chance. We're going to be recording the week that you're hearing this podcast. So, Thanksgiving episode, 6 of us, send in a question. Mark it as being for the Thanksgiving episode.
For AVRant, I'm Tom Andry.
And I'm Rob H. Now stay in and listen to something.
Want your question answered? Send it to question@avrant.com. This is AVRant.
Now go out and listen to something.